All right. So, procrastination, right? I think we all struggle with this at least a little bit. But this time we're going to go deeper than, surface level tips and tricks. We're really going to dive deep today with Stop Procrastinating, a book by Nils Salzgeber. And today we're going to learn not just how to stop procrastinating, but why we do it in the first place.
Absolutely. And the really cool thing about this book is that it goes beyond like the typical advice that you hear,
Yeah.
just like, get organized and set deadlines. It actually delves into like the psychology behind procrastination to help us understand,
Yeah.
the real reasons why we struggle.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with something that I found really fascinating. This idea of the monkey brain that the Saltscaper talks about. What is this monkey brain and how does it explain why we put things off?
Yeah, the monkey brain is basically this like analogy for that part of our brain that, always wants instant gratification. It's like this little monkey that's jumping around in our heads
Yeah.
and it's constantly seeking pleasure and avoiding anything that feels like discomfort or, effort.
Okay, so it's like that little voice that tells us to, watch another episode on Netflix instead of tackling that big project that's due next week.
Exactly. It's that voice that says, hey, let's do the easy, fun thing right now, even when we know that we should be focusing on, the more important but maybe less enjoyable tasks.
Oh, I know that voice all too well. It's like a constant battle.
And here's the thing. It's not just about willpower or laziness. Research has actually shown that our brains literally process those dreaded tasks as threats. Like they're actually dangerous.
Really? Like our brains are perceiving those tasks as if they were physical threats.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, right? But it explains why we feel so much resistance and dread, even just thinking about certain tasks. It's like our brains are trying to protect us from pain by making us avoid those things altogether.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. But I'm guessing Saltscaper has some solutions for us, right? He doesn't just leave us hanging with this, scary brain stuff.
Oh, definitely. One of the most powerful antidotes he offers is simply action. Just getting started, even for a short amount of time, can actually rewire our perception of the task.
So even if it's just for 5 minutes, just taking that first step can make a difference.
Exactly. The book highlights this idea that the pain is often in the anticipation, not in the actual doing. So by taking that first step, we kind of trick our brains into realizing, hey, this isn't actually that bad.
Oh, I like that. It's like we're outsmarting our own monkey brains.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to prove his point, Saltzgaber even shares his own personal struggles with procrastination. Even with things as simple as like his morning routine. He's like, hey, I get it. I struggle with this too.
That makes me feel so much better knowing that even the author who wrote the book on procrastination still struggles with it sometimes.
Right. It's the universal human experience. We all have that inner monkey brain that we're constantly trying to tame.
Okay, so if getting started is the key, what are some actionable strategies that we can use to actually, you know, make that happen? What are some of the tools that Saltzgeber gives us in the book?
One of the most practical techniques he talks about is this concept of implementation intentions. They're these like if-then plans that basically program our behavior.
Oh, interesting. So it's like saying if it's 8 a.m., then I'll sit down and write for 30 minutes, like creating that specific link between a trigger and an action.
Exactly. It takes the decision-making out of the equation and helps us bypass those mental negotiations that often lead to procrastination. Salzgeber even calls them instant habits because they can be so powerful in shaping our actions.
I love that. It's like we're creating these little mental shortcuts to help us get things done.
Precisely. And another strategy that I found really intriguing was this idea of lowering your standards. Now, I know that might sound counterintuitive, but hear me
Oh,
out.
lowering my standards. Isn't that like the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing?
Well, the idea is that perfectionism can actually be a huge fuel for procrastination.
Yeah.
We get so caught up in doing things perfectly that we never actually get started.
Oh, I totally get that. I've definitely been there. Like that feeling of it has to be perfect or I'm not even going to try.
Exactly. So Salzgeber suggests setting ridiculously small goals to overcome that initial resistance.
So instead of saying, I'm going to write an entire chapter today, I could say, I'm just going to write one paragraph.
Exactly. By making winning easy, we kind of trick our brains into getting started.
Mhm.
And often once we've taken that first step, we find that we're more motivated to keep going.
It's all about building that momentum, right? Like once you get the ball rolling, it's easier to keep it moving.
Absolutely. And the book also emphasizes the importance of focusing on the next step rather than getting overwhelmed by the enormity of the entire task.
Yeah, that's huge. It's so easy to get bogged down by the big picture and then just give up before you even start.
Right. Salzgeber actually shares this great quote from John Steinbeck. When I face the desolate impossibility of writing 500 pages, a sick sense of failure falls on me, and I know I can never do it. Then, gradually, I write one page and then another. One day's work is all I can permit myself to contemplate.
I love that. It's like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time?
Exactly. It's about breaking down those overwhelming tasks into manageable chunks and just focusing on that next step.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of getting started and setting small goals. But what about time management? I'm always looking for tips on how to, actually get things done.
Well, Saul Skaber had this great quote: what gets scheduled gets done. What doesn't get scheduled doesn't get done.
So true. If it's not on my calendar, it's like it doesn't even exist.
Right. And he emphasizes the importance of actually putting those tasks on our calendars
Yeah.
rather than just having them float around in our heads.
It's like making that commitment,
Yeah.
making it real.
Exactly. And he even shares this fascinating study where they asked drug addicts to write a resume by 5 p.m. that day. One group was told to specifically decide when and where they would write it, while the other group just had to do it whenever.
Okay, I'm curious what happened. Did the scheduling actually make a difference?
A huge difference. 8 out of 10 people in the scheduling group finished their resumes, while none of the other group did.
Wow, that's incredible. It really shows how much our brains need that specific commitment to take action.
It's powerful stuff. Solix Gaber also talks about the importance of starting your day on fire, meaning being really disciplined and productive in the early morning to build momentum for the rest of the day.
Oh, that's so hard, though. I'm not a morning person at all.
I hear you. But he suggests planning your day the night before to set yourself up for success. So like decide what you're going to wear, what you're going to eat, and what your top priorities are before you go to bed.
That makes sense. It's like removing those decision-making obstacles from the morning when we're most likely to procrastinate.
Exactly. It's all about being proactive and setting ourselves up for success.
So we've talked about managing our time, but what about managing those, distractions like our phones and social media and all the things that are constantly vying for our attention? How do we make those things less appealing?
Well, Saltzkeeper has this really interesting concept called making distractions pay. It's like flipping the script on our reward system.
Making distractions pay. Okay. I'm intrigued. How does that work?
Let's say you're prone to wasting time on social media, right? You could make a rule that for every extra minute you spend on those sites beyond your allotted time, you're going to donate a certain amount of money to a cause that you absolutely hate.
Oh, wow. That would definitely make me think twice before scrolling through Instagram.
Right. It leverages this psychological principle called loss aversion, which basically means that we hate losing something even more than we like gaining something of equal value.
So we're using our brain's natural wiring to our advantage.
Exactly. And you can apply this to all sorts of distractions like news websites, TV shows, video games, anything that you find yourself mindlessly drawn to.
I love that. It's like turning those distractions into mini punishments instead of rewards. Genius.
It's about taking control of our environment instead of letting it control us.
This is all so insightful. We've talked about managing our time, managing our distractions, but what about managing our inner critic? You know, that voice that tells us we're not good enough, that we're going to fail, that we should just give up? How do we deal with that?
Ah, yes, the inner critic.
Oh, yeah.
That's a tough one. And unfortunately for a lot of procrastinators, that voice can be particularly loud.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like a constant loop of negative self-talk in my head.
I feel ya. But here's the thing that Saltzkeeper points out. Self-criticism actually increases procrastination.
Wait, really? But isn't self-criticism supposed to motivate us to do better? Like, isn't that what we're always told?
Yeah, that's the common belief.
Yeah.
But research has actually shown that self-criticism makes us less likely to achieve our goals and more prone to procrastination.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. So all that negative self-talk is actually backfiring.
It seems so. Salzgeber explains that self-criticism creates this fear of failure that can actually paralyze us. Our brains are basically trying to protect us from potential judgment, even if it means sabotaging our own goals.
So what's the solution? How do we deal with setbacks and mistakes if we're not supposed to criticize ourselves?
Well, Salzgeber suggests a radical but incredibly powerful approach: self-compassion.
Self-compassion. So instead of beating ourselves up when we mess up, we should be kinder to ourselves.
Exactly. It might sound counterintuitive, but studies have shown that self-compassion actually helps us get back on track faster. Instead of dwelling in shame and guilt, we acknowledge the mistake, offer ourselves understanding, and then focus on moving forward.
I love that. It's like giving ourselves permission to be human, to make mistakes, and to learn from them.
Exactly. And Salzgeber even shares his own personal experience with how adopting self-compassion actually helped him to reduce his feelings of guilt and increase his productivity.
So it's not just about feeling good, it's actually about getting things done, too.
Right. It's about recognizing that we're all works in progress, that we're all going to stumble and fall sometimes. And the key is to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and keep moving forward with kindness and compassion.
Okay, so we've talked about managing our time, our distractions, our inner critic. But what about willpower? Where does that fit into all of this?
Well, willpower is definitely a key factor when it comes to procrastination. Salzgeber describes procrastination as a form of willpower failure.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like when I know I should be working on something, but I just don't have the willpower to resist those temptations and distractions.
Right. But the good news is willpower is like a muscle that can be strengthened with practice.
Okay, so how do we work out our willpower muscles? What kind of exercises do we need to be doing?
Well, according to Salzgeber, one of the most effective willpower boosting activities is meditation.
Meditation. Really? I know it's good for stress reduction, but how does it help with willpower?
Well, studies have shown that meditation actually changes the structure of our brains, strengthening the areas that are associated with willpower and self-awareness.
So by training our minds, we're also training our willpower.
Exactly. Salzgeber recommends practicing mindfulness meditation, which focuses on paying attention to the present moment without judgment. He even suggests using the Headspace app for guided meditations, which can be especially helpful for beginners.
Okay, I've heard good things about Headspace. What other willpower exercises does he recommend?
He's also a big proponent of exercise.
Exercise. I mean, I know it's good for our physical health, but I didn't realize it could also boost our willpower.
It's true. Studies have shown that even a short burst of exercise can reduce cravings and improve self-control. So that feeling of accomplishment you get after a workout isn't just about the physical benefits, it's also about the mental boost of flexing those willpower muscles.
I love that. It's like a 2-for-1 deal. You get the physical benefits and D, the mental benefits.
Exactly. And Salzgeber also talks about an often overlooked factor that can drain our willpower: decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue.
What's that? It's this idea that the more decisions we make throughout the day, the more depleted our willpower becomes.
Hmm.
Our brains have a limited supply of decision-making energy, and once it's gone, we're more likely to give in to those impulsive urges.
Oh, that makes so much sense. By the end of the day, I'm often so mentally exhausted that even small decisions feel like a chore.
Exactly. And that's why Salzgeber recommends simplifying your life to combat decision fatigue.
Simplifying my life. Okay, I'm all for that, but how does that help with willpower?
Well, by reducing the number of decisions we have to make each day, we conserve our mental energy, leaving us with more willpower to resist those procrastination urges.
I'm starting to see how it all ties together. It's like creating this positive feedback loop where we're simplifying our lives, conserving our energy, and boosting our willpower all at the same time.
Precisely. And Salzgeber offers some really practical tips for simplifying our lives. First, plan your day the night before, just like we talked about earlier.
Okay, I'm sensing a theme here. Planning ahead seems to be key.
Absolutely. By deciding what to wear, what to eat, and what tasks to prioritize the night before, you're freeing up mental energy for other things.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What other simplifying tips does he suggest?
He also recommends eating the same meals over and over again.
Wait, eating the same meals every day, wouldn't that get boring?
It might sound monotonous, but think about it. It eliminates the need to make decisions about what to cook or eat for every single meal.
That's true. It's one less decision to make each day.
Right. And finally, he suggests minimizing your wardrobe.
This is starting to sound like a minimalist's dream.
It can be incredibly liberating.
Mm.
By having fewer clothes, you eliminate the need to spend time each morning deciding what to wear.
Wow, these are all great tips. I never thought about simplifying my life in this way, but it makes so much sense.
It's all about streamlining our lives so we can focus on what's truly important.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the importance of getting started, setting small goals, managing our time and distractions, dealing with our inner critic, and building our willpower. But I'm curious, what about those really intense emotions that often trigger procrastination? Like that feeling of dread or anxiety that we get when we think about certain tasks. How do we deal with those?
Well, Salzgeber actually has a really cool technique for this. He calls it emotion surfing.
Emotion surfing. Okay, I've never heard of that before. What is it?
Well, imagine you're facing a task that makes you feel anxious or overwhelmed. Instead of trying to push those feelings away or avoid the task altogether, Emotion surfing encourages us to actually stay present with those feelings and ride them out like a surfer riding a wave.
So instead of resisting those negative emotions, we lean into them.
Exactly. It might sound counterintuitive, but by accepting and observing those feelings without judgment, we can actually reduce their power over us.
Okay, but how do you actually do that? How do you surf an emotion?
Well, it starts with awareness. Recognize those procrastination urges as they arise. Then, instead of reacting or pushing those feelings away, simply observe them. Notice the physical sensations in your body. Maybe you feel tightness in your chest, or your heart is racing, or your breathing becomes shallow. Just acknowledge those feelings without judging them, reminding yourself that it's okay to feel this way.
So we're basically creating space for those emotions to exist without letting them control our actions.
Exactly. And here's the amazing part. By simply staying with those feelings and observing them, we often find that they start to lose their intensity. Just like a wave, they rise, crest, and then gradually subside.
Wow, that's fascinating. So by resisting the urge to run away from those uncomfortable feelings, we actually disarm them.
Precisely. And once those feelings have subsided, we're in a much better position to make a conscious choice about how to proceed. We're no longer reacting from a place of fear or anxiety.
I love that. It's like we're learning to be the captain of our own emotional ship, navigating those choppy waters with skill and grace.
I love that analogy. And Salzgeber reminds us that emotion surfing takes practice, just like any other skill. The more we practice, the better we'll become at riding those emotional waves.
Definitely adding emotion surfing to my procrastination busting toolkit. Okay, so we've got a lot of great strategies here, but I'm wondering, what about tracking our progress? Is there a way to monitor our procrastination habits and see if we're actually improving?
Absolutely. Salzgeber recommends keeping a procrastination log. It's a simple but really effective tool for increasing self-awareness.
A procrastination log. What's that?
It's basically a journal where you track your procrastination habits, write down the tasks you're avoiding, the reasons why you're putting them off, and any thoughts or feelings that come up.
So it's like we're becoming procrastination detectives, gathering evidence to understand our own behavior patterns.
Exactly. By documenting our habits, we bring them into our conscious awareness, which makes it easier to recognize those patterns and develop strategies for breaking free.
That's brilliant. I'm definitely going to start a procrastination log today. It sounds like a really helpful way to gain insight into those sneaky procrastination tendencies.
It can be incredibly eye-opening, and Salzgeber points out that simply keeping a log can be transformative in itself.
Mm,
It helps us become more mindful of our choices and more accountable for our actions.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered so much ground today. We've talked about the neuroscience of procrastination, the power of getting started, practical strategies for managing our time and distractions, dealing with our inner critic, building willpower, and even surfing those emotional waves. I'm feeling so inspired and ready to tackle those tasks I've been putting off.
That's fantastic. Remember, be kind to yourself, celebrate those small victories, and focus on progress over perfection. Overcoming procrastination is a journey, not a destination.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about all these great tools and strategies from Saltzkeeper's book, like managing our time and dealing with distractions and being more self-compassionate and building our willpower. But how do we actually USE all of this stuff to, create the life we want? It feels like it's one thing to, get our to-do list done, but it's another thing to actually achieve our dreams and goals.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And that's where it gets really exciting because these strategies are not just about productivity. They're about using that newfound freedom and energy to actually create a life that's, aligned with our values and passions.
So it's like taking all of that energy that we were wasting on procrastination and redirecting it towards something, more meaningful.
Exactly. It's about shifting from a life of reactivity to a life of intention and action. Instead of letting our monkey brains call the shots, we can actually start making conscious choices about how we spend our time and energy.
I love that. It's like taking back control of the steering wheel.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about like the big things, like career goals or travel plans. It's also about the smaller everyday things that bring us joy and fulfillment. Like maybe you've always wanted to learn how to play the guitar or start a garden or write a novel. Well, these procrastination busting techniques can help you actually make those things happen.
It's like giving ourselves permission to actually pursue those passions and interests that we've been putting off for so long.
Exactly. And I think one of the most important things to remember is that it's not about being perfect. It's about progress. There will be setbacks along the way. There will be days when we slip up and procrastinate. But the key is to be kind to ourselves, pick ourselves up, and keep moving forward.
That's such an important reminder. It's so easy to get discouraged when we don't see results immediately or when we make mistakes, but it's all part of the process, right?
Absolutely. And the more we practice these strategies, the easier it becomes. It's like building a muscle. The more we use it, the stronger it gets. And eventually, those procrastination habits will start to weaken, and we'll find ourselves naturally gravitating towards those activities that are truly meaningful to us.
I love that analogy. It's like we're training our brains to be more focused and disciplined and intentional.
Exactly.
Mm.
And as we continue to grow and evolve, we'll discover new ways to apply these strategies to different areas of our lives. It's an ongoing journey of self-discovery and improvement.
Well said. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is that overcoming procrastination isn't just about being more productive. It's about creating a life that is truly fulfilling and aligned with our values.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes this book so powerful. It's not just about getting things done. It's about
Yeah.
living a life that is rich and meaningful and full of purpose.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I feel like we've really gone beyond just, the typical productivity tips and tricks. We've explored this whole new way of thinking about procrastination and its potential to actually help us create the life we want.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to take what you've learned today and experiment with these strategies in your own lives. See what works for you. And most importantly, be kind to yourself along the way.
Absolutely. Remember, this is a journey, not a destination. So enjoy the process, embrace the challenges, and celebrate those small victories.
It's amazing how much we've uncovered just by looking at this one book. It's like procrastination is this, hidden doorway to a whole world of self-discovery.
Right. And Salzgeber does a fantastic job of not just giving us strategies to manage procrastination, but actually encouraging us to view it as this feedback mechanism. Like what can we learn from those things that we're avoiding?
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. So instead of, just powering through or beating ourselves up for procrastinating, we can actually stop and ask ourselves, okay, what's this procrastination trying to tell me?
Exactly. Like maybe the task itself is just truly uninspiring, or maybe it's misaligned with our values, or maybe we need to break it down into smaller steps so it feels less overwhelming, or maybe, we're just afraid of failing and procrastination is this, sneaky way of protecting ourselves from that potential disappointment.
Oh my gosh, that's so me. I am the queen of procrastination by fear of failure.
Right. And that's where those tools and strategies that we talked about earlier come in. Like things like implementation intentions and making distractions pay, and even just, building our willpower through meditation and exercise. All of that can help us to overcome those fears and actually take action even when it feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's like we're not just managing procrastination, we're actually building these life skills that can help us in all areas of our lives.
Totally. It's about developing greater self-awareness and emotional intelligence and the ability to kind of take charge of our own lives.
It's so empowering. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. We've covered so much ground. The neuroscience of procrastination, the power of getting started, strategies for time management and distraction management, the importance of self-compassion, and even this amazing idea of procrastination as an opportunity for growth.
It's been so much fun exploring all of this with you.
Absolutely. And to our listeners out there, we hope you've enjoyed this journey as much as we have. Remember, overcoming procrastination is a process. It's not about being perfect, it's about progress.
Be kind to yourself. Celebrate those small wins and keep moving forward one step at a time.
That's a wrap on this deep dive into procrastination. We hope you feel inspired to tackle those tasks and dreams that you've been putting off. Until next time, happy diving!